Hey guys, this is Amber from NotableInk.com, and I'm so excited to share my second project for the Hedgehog Hollow August 2019 box. This was a collaboration with Syberia. I'll post her information below so you can check her out if you haven't already. And I'll also link my first post up above where I did color pencil on these florals, different florals. There's 2 stamp sets in this box, but today we're going to be doing some loose watercolor. We're going to do some wet on wet and some wet on dry technique. As always, I'll have all the supplies used listed below. Here's a preview of some of the stamps in the set, and let's get started. Here's the stamps that I'm going to be using. This is the second stamp set in the box, and I'm going to be using the Altenew pan watercolors today. I've gone ahead and stamped the flower and the bud in pink pearl ink and the leaves and the kind of smaller buds in frayed leaf ink. So I have coral berry half pan here, and I wanted to do kind of a peachy tone, so I'm going to mix a couple colors for that, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and rehydrate these half pans. And so I've wet my brush quite a bit. I've kind of smushed that around onto the cube, and then I'm just going to kind of scrape my brush off onto the side of the pan so that I can get as much ink into my little pan here as possible. So I'm mixing some fresh lemon with the coral berry. The fresh lemon was much stronger of a color than I anticipated, so it turned the coral berry a little more orange than I wanted. So what I'm going to do to correct that is just bring in a couple more colors. You're going to see me, so again, you can see me kind of trying to get off as much of the pigment off of my brush as possible. I'm going to start by diluting this because I did want some soft coloring. Still, I love my vibrant color, so we're not going to go like totally muted tones, but I wanted a bit of a softer look than what I normally do. So I'm going to bring in some cotton candy, and again, we'll just rehydrate that and add it. Now, cotton candy is a little bit more of a muted pink, at least when it's mixed with this. So I'm going to grab a second pink and add that. So we have pink diamond. Now this is a brighter pink, and then this is gonna give me the tone that I was looking for. So it just gives you an idea. You kind of just mix them until you get the color that you want. You want to try and mix enough of it so that you have enough, but honestly, if you have to mix more and one of your flowers is a little bit different, I think that adds more character to your project. So don't get overly stressed about mixing your colors. So I've got the colors mixed, and I was chatting with my friend Terry and clearly didn't hit record, but we still have plenty of watercoloring to do, so don't despair if you're like, what the heck, she didn't show anything. I am going to show some stuff. In fact, some of these flowers haven't had the second layer added yet. So what I did is a wet on wet technique where I covered each petal in water separately, and then I dropped in my pink mixture that we just made for a really diluted layer. I did that on the large bloom and the small bloom, and I dried it with a heat tool, and then I'm going to come in and do my second detail layer. So for the folds in the petals, I'm going to add some of the full strength, kind of the fresh lemon over there, which is more of a golden color. I'm going to add those to the folds. I also added some of that yellow into the base of the petals just for some variation in color. And then for a couple of these pink petals that only have that first coat of wet on wet technique, you're going to see me come in with another layer of the pink and do wet on dry. So the flower is dry, and this is how I got my details in. I just brought in the wet brush onto the dry paper and kind of pounced it around to get more of like an abstract shape in there. And then for some of them, I added a little bit of the yellow. I didn't add the yellow to all of the petals because as I was adding it, I felt like it was a little too overpowering. And you can see I did the same thing for the smaller flower above. So again, I'm really sorry that I don't have that filmed and I didn't have time to color up another one for you guys, but we're going to go through all the leaves and the buds together. And I actually kept this footage at regular time, so this is normal speed. Normally I would speed this up because watercolor takes some time. Here I've used Industrial Diamond. It's a dark gray, and I'm just going to add some detail into the center of the bloom, and I'm just kind of stippling that on there with my brush. I'll let that completely dry before I come back and add another color to the center for more depth. And I kind of wish I had left a little bit of a highlight in there, more of like a dome shape, but is what it is. So we'll move on to the leaves now. So this is exactly how I did the flower. So I would, put down some clean, clear water, and then I would drop in the pigment. So for the flower, it was the pink that we had created. For this, the greens that I have are frayed leaf, and then frayed leaf and what? Forest Glades is the darker green. So the lighter green is frayed leaf. Again, those are also from the half pan set from Altenew. So I'm just kind of moving that around, and you'll see, so I have two different types of leaves here, and I want them to look a little bit different. So for the larger leaves, I won't put down a layer of clean, clear water. I'll go straight in with the wet on dry technique. So I've frayed leaf on my brush, and I'm just putting a coat of that down, and then I'll come in with the Forest Glades and add the depth with that. So it's just a little bit different of a look, really not too much different. So here you can see I'm even trying to, now I have some water, and I was just trying to kind of spread that out, smooth it out a little bit. So I have the Forest Glades, and I don't love how I put that on. I wish that the leaf had been more dry before I started that. So you can see I'm going to try and correct that. So I'm just spreading it out a bit. And there's two folds in this leaf that curls over just a little bit there. So I want to get some depth underneath that fold. And then there's a fold down the left side as well. So here I need a highlight there on the other side of that fold. So I have just a clean brush, and it's a dry brush so that I can pick up some of that pigment and lift it so that I can leave myself a highlight there. And then I'll come in with the Forest Glade and create the depth under that fold after it dries a little. So here you can see I'm just adding the shadow underneath that flower. That'll cast a shadow, and then again the line that comes up the middle. Now that the leaf below is dry, I'll go back and add some depth there. If you want to have kind of a sharp delineation, you want to make sure that your first layer is dry. Otherwise, your paint is just going to blend in and not have any kind of sharpness to it. If you want a blended look, then you want to add your next color while the first layer is still wet. I couldn't decide if these were buds or more like little berries, or I couldn't decide what they were. And because of that, I couldn't decide what color I wanted to color them. I wanted to have a third element of pink, but my outline was in green because I stamped those in green. So I compromised, and I'm going to do these in pink and green. So like what I just talked about, I don't want my pink and my green to mix. So it's going to be really important after I add this layer of pink to make sure it's completely dry before I come in with my layer of green. Otherwise, it's going to end up turning brown. And in fact, as I do the green, I end up adding a little more pink, and it does get just a touch brown, which I was okay with, but I'll point that out as we get there. So now that my little we'll call them buds, now that my buds are dry, I'm adding green, and you can see that the green is holding its own. It's not turning brown right now because the pink is dry. So I'm going to go ahead and blend out the sharp edge, and I wish that I had kind of dabbed off my brush in between each one, because it kind of masked the pink a little more than I would have liked. So because of that, I come back in now with a little more pink, but you'll notice I haven't dried it. So what I really should have done was dried it in between. So I'll go ahead, I'll give it just a little bit of time to dry by adding some dark green to the stems, into those little areas up top. And you can see that my pink is really muted. I'll just add a few flicks of detail. And then before anything is dry, I go in and add more pink. Like, what? Why? And I do think it's okay. Like, I don't think it turned too brown, but I think it would have looked nicer if I had let it dry. So I'm going to go ahead and take some Forest Glades and add a little bit of that. I'd watered it down just a touch. I'm going to add a little bit of that to the center, and that just mutes out the gray that I have. But because the gray is dry, it's going to leave the detail of the gray. The green is diluted, so that's kind of just blends into the center there a little bit. So I've used my masks that I use for stamping. I've brought those back out because when I add splatter to a piece, I really don't like it on my flowers. I don't mind if it's on my leaves, but the main pieces that I've spent a lot of time coloring, it makes me really nervous to splatter over those. So use your masks and go ahead and cover those up. And I'm just using the same paint. I watered it down a little bit more, and I'm just flicking that on. So I want to have some pink splatters and some green, but you have to, again, same thing, you have to dry your splatter in between. Otherwise, your green and your pink splatters are going to mix if they end up on top of each other. And I want them to be their own distinct colors. And I love these paints. I don't use these paints as much as I use my watercolor brush markers because I love the really vibrant colors. But I was really enjoying the muted tones of these today. So you can see that there. And as always, I don't think about my sentiment to the end. This sentiment is from the set, and it just reads, "Thank you." Oh, no, this one is just for you. I did thank you on another one. And I stamped it a couple times in frayed leaf, and then I decided that I wanted to ground the bottom of the letters a little bit. So I'm inking up just the bottom of the letters in Forest Glades, and it's going to add just a touch of an ombre effect to kind of match those leaves a little bit more. And that's the finished card. I added a few white Nuvo drops for embellishment, which you can see here, and I love how this turned out. For most of my watercolor projects recently, I've used ink pads for the watercolors, and I usually end up using a layer of color pencils after to add detail. So I was really excited to have used actual watercolors on this project and to not add any color pencil detour or feel like I needed to. I really liked the style of this technique and kind of the loose, funky edges that it has, and it's definitely something that I will do again. I hope that you feel inspired to try it as well. If you haven't checked out this box, I will have the link to the Hedgehog Hollow for this box below. Hopefully there are still some available that you can snag. These stamp sets and these florals are absolutely amazing. I cannot speak highly of them enough. Syberia's designs are just awesome, and I hope that we'll be able to have her designs again in some future boxes. Thanks so much for joining me today, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button below and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I so appreciate your support, and I get really excited when you guys interact in the comments, so let me know what you think down below. I love to hear from you guys. Thanks again for stopping by, and until next time, breathe, ink, inspire.